A Christian Society. Leslie Bounds, 1946. Published in The Technocrat, April 1946, number 113, scanned and in lightly proofread by Trent. Despite the title, this is not an article on religion. Nor is it an attack on any religious belief or creed. Rather, it is an attempt to show how illogical it is to attempt to establish what we are pleased to call a Christian society in an economy where the rule is not the golden rule, but every fellow for himself and the devil take the hindmost. For that is the type of society in which we live today. Of course, some will deny the accuracy of that statement and claim that all we need is some moral reconversion and all will be well. Well, we are not going to argue about it, but anyone who will take the trouble to examine the nature of our social economy will see that it is impossible to practice what we call Christian principles when it is becoming harder every day to chisel a bare existence. One of the outstanding exponents of Christian social reconstruction is the Archbishop of Canterbury, who once horrified the British Chancellor of the Exchequer by suggesting that a budget surplus should be given to the unemployed rather than used to reduce taxes. At one time, Archbishop Temple set forth 6 propositions for a Christian society. Technocracy has no quarrel with any of them. In fact, we are heartily in accord with them, and are using every effort to assure their realization for all Americans. However, these lofty ideals will never be realized as long as we cling to the obsolete social order which is America's price system. They can, on the other hand, quickly become an integral part of the lives of all Americans once we install the scientific social design of the American technate, the design which technocracy indicates as the next most probable state of society on the North American continent. Let us consider the propositions offered by the Archbishop and analyze them in the light of the improbability of their realization under our present social structure. The first one states, every child should find itself a member of a family house with decency and dignity. In the light of existing housing conditions throughout America, this proposition sounds almost ludicrous. With millions of our children housed in crowded tenements and slum areas, in trailers, shacks, abandoned chicken coops, army barracks and many other makeshifts that offer nothing more than bare shelter, to talk of decency and dignity is to make a mockery of those terms. President Truman has recently outlined a housing program covering a 2-year period, during which 2,700,000 new homes for veterans are to be built. Anyone who has been having trouble getting a little lumber for needed repairs might wonder where the materials are coming from for such an ambitious program, but anyway it is a good idea. A system of subsidies will guarantee the necessary profit which, of course, is the required incentive for private enterprise to go ahead. It seems extremely doubtful that Congress will permit any price ceilings on old buildings, so everybody in the real estate business ought to be very happy over the whole thing. Our veterans will be permitted to go into debt in order to finance these new homes, and that will be good for the banking fraternity. Now let us take a look at the figures submitted by Wilson Wyatt, housing administrator. Married veterans who will need homes by December, says Mr. Wyatt, total 2,900,000. Others who will marry and need homes by the end of this year number 560,000, making a total of 3,460,000. Deduct from this total 945,000 vacancies caused by dissolution of families, and the net additional homes needed by the end of 1946 is 2,515,000. The total needed by the end of 1947 will be 3,195,000. In other words, the President's program will just about offset the demand of new families being established. Not a word is said about those millions of Americans now living in substandard homes. Are these to be forgotten? Is our Christian society going to condemn these millions to a lifetime of squalor and poverty? What about this decency and dignity Archbishop Temple mentions? Apparently the Archbishop concedes, by implication, the lack of a Christian society at the present time, because certainly no one could say the unfortunate children of families living under such conditions are housed with decency and dignity. That happy condition must await the arrival of a new social design in America, when price and profit no longer decide whether we live in decency and dignity or in poverty and squalor. America has the resources and the engineering capacity to house adequately every American family in decency and dignity. How long are the wives and mothers of this nation going to endure conditions which compel even one family to live in any other way? every child should have an opportunity or education up to maturity. Here, again, our present society fails to measure up to specifications. True, we have far greater opportunities for education than we ever had before, but we still fall far short of this suggested requirement for a Christian society. As we have pointed out on previous occasions, education today is limited, like everything else, by the purchasing power available either of the community or of the individual. It cannot, by the very nature of price system methods operation, be free to every citizen. Building materials for schools cost money. Teachers must be paid salaries. Books must be purchased. And all of these items must be provided for out of the public purse. Students desiring to go on to college and university must provide their own financing, or the parents must foot the bills. Too frequently it happens that a boy or girl must leave school and go to work in order to aid the family financially. In short, we do not yet have the kind of society in which we can guarantee our children opportunity for education up to maturity. Here, again, we fail in Archbishop Temple's conception of a Christian society. Yet there is no reason why we should continue to fail, because the makings of that type of society are at our disposal right now. We have only to conform to the demands of a technological society and install a social design compatible with our present scientific and technological development. Sooner or later we will have to install that design in order to avert social chaos, so why the delay? In the social design of technocracy you will find the specifications for the complete education of every citizen up to maturity. The first 25 years will be devoted to education and training for some functional capacity in one of the industrial or service sequences. The energy cost of operating this educational sequence would be part of the continental overhead and would cost the individual nothing. It would be rendered as a national service, just as the fire and police protection one would receive, or the public health service, not because of any Christian principles but because illiterates cannot operate successfully the highly complex structure of modern civilization in America. And so we would see once again the realization of what we call Christian principles, not because of any religious beliefs or ideologies, but because that happens to be the only way modern civilization in America can be operated successfully. Every citizen should have sufficient income to make a home and bring up his children properly. We could write a series of articles enlarging on this theme. For the present, however, we must content ourselves with pointing out that mass chasing power in America steadily declines as our technological installations increase. That is just another way of saying that the more machines we use, the fewer men are necessary to produce the things we need. Wages and salaries are paid for man-hours of human labor, and the trend in America is toward fewer man-hours in industry. Only a comparatively small percentage of the population receives sufficient purchasing power to make a home and bring up their children properly. And how much can we purchase with our steadily declining income? With every passing month we find our purchasing power dwindling. Wages may remain the same or even increase, but is how much we can buy with our money that determines our standard of living. And the cost of living is steadily rising. Food, clothing and shelter all are going up. It is not so bad when wages can be raised accordingly, but this only means added costs of production and increased prices. The costs of production can be lowered by the installation of more automatic machinery, but this, in turn, means increased unemployment. There is another large group in our national economy that suffers increasingly from the rising cost of living. This group is made up of those living on pensions, salaries fixed by law, investments and so on. Pensions, at best mere pittances, have not been increased. Salaries fixed by law usually need constitutional amendments to change, and, while some have been adjusted, the increases have not been sufficient to make much difference. Incomes from investments have, for the most part, declined due to lowering interest rates and high corporate taxes. Many of the stockholders of large corporations are little people who own, on the average, only a few shares each. High taxes and increased wages have been used as an excuse to reduce dividends in many cases, causing considerable hardship among small stockholders. In short, the late President Roosevelt's statement that 1/3 of our nation is ill-housed, ill-fed and ill-clothed still holds good, and if Archbishop Temple's Christian society is to be realized, it will have to be outside the limitations of America's price system.